Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I come bearing most excellent news. Patricia Smith is in the house and would love to read us some poems. Yeah. This is an awesome turnout. Thank you again for coming. So my name is Matt Donovan. I'm the director of the Boutelle-Day Poetry Center. I I am really honored and so grateful to be hosting Patricia Smith's this evening for a number of reasons. She's probably tired of me bringing this up, but I'm going to do it one more time. Some of you recall that Patricia Smith was supposed to be here back in February 2023. I'm going to keep going, Patricia. For the days leading up to the reading, however, weather forecasters were predicting the storm of the century, and at the last minute, we were forced to cancel the event. And then, in what can only be called a merciless act of cruelty in which the gods were just messing with us, we woke up on the scheduled day of our reading to brilliant sunshine and blue skies. But we were not to be deterred, and the consolation for that consolation was learning that we could coordinate Patricia's rescheduled reading with the release of this amazing book, The Intentions of Thunder, her new and selected poems. And that was a celebration that Smith College most definitely wanted to be a part of. The timing of her visit is now all the more celebratory, all the sweeter, since we are 1 week away from the National Book Awards, for which The Intentions of Thunder is a finalist. As many of you know, the National Book Award, it's one of the highest literary honors, and we are so thrilled that we get to be a part of the festivities and celebration. Before I say anything else, can I just make a pitch for this stunning, career-spanning, badass, jam-packed, utterly indispensable book? With its devastating acts of witness, its linguistic pyrotechnics, formal mastery, acts of profound joy and empathy, and page after page of poems it turns out we cannot live without, I would really urge you to pick up a copy of this book. As always, our friends from Broadside Books are selling them out in the back in the atrium. I hope you'll consider buying a copy if you can. So the way tonight's program will work is that Patricia will be introduced by Smith College students enrolled in Melissa Parrish's seminar titled American Poetry in an Age of Emergency. Yahoo! Following the reading, those students will then, other students from the class will engage in a Q&A with Patricia, which will then be followed by a book signing right down here at the purple tablecloths. As always, if you just want to come by and say hello to Patricia, she'd love to meet you and say hello, so please come by and do that too. I would love to thank our co-sponsors for tonight's event as well. First and foremost, there's the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Every year, in honor of Otelia Cromwell, the first Black student to attend Smith College, we ask one poet, someone whose work invites explorations of race and racial justice in America, to serve as our annual Cromwell poet. And I cannot think of a better writer to serve in that capacity than Patricia Smith. I also want to thank the Smith College Lecture Committee, which directly helped fund tonight's reading, as well as our other co-sponsors, American Studies, the Department of English Language and Literature, and the Study of Women, Gender, and Sexuality. I want to thank Tom Clytus, as always, for streaming tonight's event online, and thank you to everyone who's joining us online as well. My English 112 students, you know what to do. There will be QR codes. I'm almost sure they'll work at the end of the event, and you can scan those when those go up. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Melissa Parrish, who will be saying a few words about the students in her class. Melissa Parrish, as so many of you I think know, is just an awesome assistant professor of English here at Smith College, where she teaches American Lit with an emphasis on poetry and poetics. We're incredibly lucky to have her, such an exemplary scholar and devoted educator of contemporary poetry here at the college. She is brilliant, one of her students wrote online. Is this gonna embarrass you? I'm gonna finish. She is this is what the student said, she is the passionate poet activist professor that makes you want to be a poet activist professor yourself. And then this awesome line too, she speaks the way you want your essays to sound. Melissa is currently completing a book titled Situation Normal: Emergency Poetics and the Rise of the National Security State, which explores the way contemporary poetry reveals and resists the U.S. national security state's prominent role in shaping public emergency discourse. I have no doubt that her book will be as vital and profound as that sounds. Please welcome Melissa Parrish.
Well, thank you, Matt, for those embellishments, in addition to the bio I gave you. I'm just up here briefly. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. And I'm here to briefly just to introduce and express my gratitude to the 9 students who've been working hard all semester on matters of art, representation, politics, and crisis in a seminar, as you've heard, titled American Poetry in the Age of Emergency, a topic that is, unfortunately, quite relevant. These students have collaboratively composed the introduction and the questions for tonight's reading and conversation. A few of them have generously offered to represent the larger group on stage tonight. To all of you, to all 9 of you, my students in my class, especially to those of you who are coming on stage, thank you. It's not easy work, but it's important work, and I'm so glad to be doing this work with you. We're here tonight, after all, because it's important to remember how powerfully we can take what could otherwise feel like a purely classroom-based exercise or conversation into the public sphere, as it is tonight. And it's important to know that we can do that work by thoughtfully celebrating the arts, even at, or perhaps especially at, a moment in which crisis is so thick in the air that it has been made ordinary. For more on this topic, I'd like to turn things over to my students, particularly to Sophie, Miranda, and Ro Medavoy-Klotz, who will introduce the work they've done in our course in conversation with Patricia Smith's wonderful and important body of work. After the reading will be followed by a conversation with Patricia and Phoebe Ice, Nicole Del Rio, and Anna Utes. So please join me in welcoming Sophie and Ro on stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ro.
And my name is Sophie.
And we're representing the Smith College English Seminar class, American Poetry in the Age of Emergency. We're honored this evening to introduce the incredible Patricia Smith. Smith has been a finalist for the National Book Award, the Neustadt International Prize for Literature, and the Pulitzer Prize. She has received countless other awards, such as the NAACP Image Award and the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize for her work. Smith crafts poems that trace Black history, memorialize survivors of American catastrophes, and she unflinchingly depicts moments of violence through poignant, evocative language. By skillfully pairing the musicality of poetry with the urgency of social justice, Smith breathes life into her poems and constructs dynamic, painfully human narratives. Terrence Hayes described Smith as a storm of beautiful, frightening talent. Her words will wash you or wash you away. I consider this new book a major literary event. Thank you, Patricia, for being here with us tonight. We'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone who made this event possible, our campus partners who organized Boutelle-Day, the Boutelle-Day Poetry Center, Matt Donovan, and our amazing professor, Melissa Parrish, as well as the classmates in our English seminar. Our seminar investigates the way in which poetry allows us to reframe moments of crisis through a critical lens. Throughout this semester, we've returned to this question: what is art's role, in this case poetry, in helping us make sense of the crisis conditions of our time? Patricia Smith's new and selected poems help us answer this question, offering a moving illustration of the power of poetry in times of crisis, as well as the importance of understanding its limitations.
Patricia Smith's latest book, The Intentions of Thunder, is a collection of her essential poetry and a stirring culmination of her achievements as a poet. The Intentions of Thunder is split into sections based on her previous collections of poetry spanning her career. Each is prefaced by a short introduction, and Smith's provocative prose slips into these pages as well, forming a lyrical bridge between the past and present. Because our class has focused so much on poetry's engagement with crisis, we spent a lot of time this semester engaging with Blood Dazzler, Smith's 2008 collection of dramatic monologues speaking to the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. In her introduction to her selections from Blood Dazzler, Smith writes, "Writers slip a medal over her head, say, 'This is good work, poet,' but when limelight washes over the snazzy awards, she sees a table of snarling skinheads, another table of immeasurably sad women without sons. Being poems still hasn't saved them." Smith weaves self-awareness together with a sharp reality check for her readers, acknowledging the reception of her poetry while forcing the reader to bear witness to the shortcomings of her words in the real world. Being poems still hasn't saved them, she reminds us, words that hover over the poems that follow. As we bear witness to the devastation of Hurricane Katrina, 17 years after these poems were originally published, Smith forces us to reckon with the fact that neither recording these stories nor reading them can undo the destruction nor the pain. Smith demonstrates a skillful awareness of her distance from Katrina as a poet and a witness to the devastation and the ongoing suffering wrought by the crisis.
While reading the selection of poems from Blood Dazzler and Intentions of Thunder, the poem What to Tweak struck me as an especially gripping critique of the American government's incompetence and outright apathy in the face of national disaster. The poem incorporates prose with excerpts from the email of Marty Bahamonde, a FEMA employee who was in New Orleans during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, to his boss, Michael Brown. As I was reading this passage, I was struck by the contrast between the bureaucratic language used for crisis reports, quote, DMAT staff working in deplorable conditions, and the emotionally charged, richly descriptive language of Smith's poetry, quote, breathing bladed, blood-tinged black. Smith's prose, which details not only the suffering of individuals, but also their resilience and strength, has a powerful effect on its readers. She's able to channel a multitude of voices through her work, from the hurricane's monstrous self to 34 senior citizens and even a well-loved dog, in order to create a rich collage of differing narratives.
Despite focusing on Katrina, Patricia Smith's words have never been so poignant. In an age of extreme weather that leaves the most marginalized communities to bear the effects of fossil fuels and pollution, racial reckonings, both past and present, and ongoing dehumanization of those most vulnerable under our current administration, Smith's poetry resonates beyond the time of writing, providing crucial guidance but also solace for the times in which we live. In her poem, Scars Poetica, Smith states it plainly, "I write because it's contrary to kill." With so much death and violence in the world, at times it feels like the only thing to do, the only way to express such frustration and outrage is to write. We thank Patricia Smith for the visionary words she has given us to help process our modern age. Without further ado, please join us in welcoming the incomparable Patricia Smith.
I am so utterly spoiled right now. Oh, wow. That was beautiful. Thank you again. Thank you so. I wish I had taped it. I'd love the. It's like I could just go around saying, "Now we present to you." That was wonderful, and thank you for. Obviously, you're an incredible teacher, so I thank you for giving my work a place in your class. It really means a lot to me, and your students. I never saw students like a professor that much. Did you pay them? There's something. Finally, good to. I won't mention the other thing when I tried to get here because, but it's very, very, very good to be here. I'm so happy. Met a lot of incredible students today, a lot of incredibly faculty and staff. So hopefully, I'm going to try and read. So maybe I'll get invited back again. This is a book of poems from about 5 or 6, 7 different books. And it was really interesting going back into my work to choose poems for this book. one of the things I realized, it was hard because you go back in, you see a poem, and you go, that was when my father died, or that was when my heart was broken, or is when I lost my job. You know, all kinds of things in there. You kind of have to relive them again. So when I got done doing it, I said, I'm old. This stuff has happened to me. So I decided to write a poem about being 70. This is where you're supposed to say, you can't be 70. I left you enough room to get that in there. Nobody said anything. Thanks so much. Well, first, it seems immeasurably unjust that no one clues you to this bombshell. You will lose your pubic hair. No one brought up this grave development, the swift debut of silver slowly turning soulless gray, then just an anarchy of wire till one by one your glistening strands betray you, disengage, and drift. Behold and lo, you're bald in undreamt ways. My perfumed kink and curl, dense lace embellishing the door to everything, no longer shines its light for episodic visitors. I own a home not quite abandoned, simply stripped. The fireplace still ablaze within its walls. And this is a number of sonnets, so I'm just going to pause and read the next one. I'm shamed by how much satisfaction I experience when I scan random crowds and whisper, everyone I see will die. The difference now is that I'm well aware that I'm included. If I shut my eyes to sleep, to hush this drowsy body down because the world is swirling, when I wake, I'm just a little farther underground. And yes, I'm terrified, and so are you, admit it. Someone said you die and just relive the life you've lost again, 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 with all its woe and wounds. That's hell. I think I'd rather ceaselessly replay that breathing just before the end of breath. I mourn the many poems that I failed to write, and then those poems that I failed. The poems I assumed would shove a life back into life, unlatch a cage, or turn 1,000 thirsty bullets back around. Revive a fallen daddy, shrink a war, unreeling lines I thought could heal a thing, slam shut a thing, reverse a thing, or teach an Annie Pearl to love her reckless child. I grieved the lawless verses that fought back and silenced me because I lacked the spine required to know the tale they told was mine. I trusted myself blind. I really thought the words would grow to gospel in my hands. And back to death again. It hovers, smirks, and rides that vile McRib right to my mouth and down. It's eyeing me. Who'll greet me at the gates? A God? No God? I've seen the hope. Resuscitated woofs and fluffies, kin now tumorless and gleeful, those who raised you younger than they ever were, all hauling ass through heaven toward you. My daddy with his glinting golden mouth, and Brady Bear, my burner, Ron the mutt, and yes, my mother, maybe with a heart that works. This hallmark paradise does what a blindfold does. You crave a light that isn't there until it is. It isn't. But what about the rampant blaze that scars that other place? Incendiary claws that fight to pull you down. Most poets swear they've been to hell, prefer the place because there's no gap left for silence. There's no time to muse, regret, revise, or wonder what you've done or haven't, just the bellowing of flames that shift your skin. The bane of Beelzebub begins and keeps beginning. But I suspect this too is trickery, a candy dangled, daring poet's near. We don't mind fire if there's a tail attached. But what of me, whose greatest fear is dirt and stillness? What if now is what there is? For what must be the thousandth time, I watched the shutter-hipped industrious machine that is Beyonce's body, and it's like I'm on another planet. When you're 70, it's best to file that under kiss my old decrepit ass and go about your business. So what's life like? Let's see. I move, a sound comes out. A yowl, a groan, a pained, unwinding hiss. Or if it's just my knees again, a scream that freaks the birds outside. My neck is prone to locking, and my eyes can only work behind a nerdy chunk of thick prescription glass. And oops, it's time to wind this sonnet down, but there is so much left to gripe about, so let's proceed. I stare at my reflection, and I see my melody is waning. No surprise, but only blues take root and hold. I spot inside myself the girl who never was less than a dance, who loved her daddy like a god. I wallow in my history because there's just so goddamn much of it. And then I wonder if I've done enough or anything. I question me until I have to sit and catch my breath. Oh, hallelujah, all this old. It's what I've done. I wrote, I loved, I broke apart. I write, I love, I break apart. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I used to open all my readings with this poem I'm about to read. And after a while, I was like, why do I keep doing that? And it's because this reminds me of the power that language has to move you from one place in your head to a safer place. Back when I was really just starting out, the first place I was invited to go and read poetry was at a school in Dade County, Miami. And I went bounding in. I'm here to teach you poetry. It was a group of 6th graders. And the area that I went to had a high incidence of drug use. So there were a lot of kids who had lost parents or siblings to AIDS and drug abuse. And I come in saying, oh, I'm here to teach you poetry. And they're looking at me like, well, how are you going to make our lives better? So there was a little girl there named Nicole. Her mother had just died. And she asked me to help her write a poem about her mother that didn't have anything to do with how she died. Building Nicole's mama. I am astonished at their mouthful names. Lacanicia, Chevalane, DeLeo, Fumaleo. Their ragged rebellions and lip gloss pouts and all those pants drooped as drapery. I rejoice when they kiss my face, whisper wet and urgent in my ear, make me their obsession because I have brought them poetry. They shout me raw, bruise my wrist with their pulling, and brashly claim me as mama as they cradle my head in their little laps, waiting for new words to grow in my mouth. You. Angry, jubilant, weeping poets, we are all saviors, reluctant hosannas in the limelight, but you knew that, didn't you? So let us bless this 6th grade class. 40 cracking voices, 40 nappy heads, and all of them raise their hands when I ask. They have all seen the Reaper, grim in his heavy robe, pushing the button for the Dead Project elevator, begging for a break at the corner pawn shop, cackling wildly in the back pew of the Baptist church. I ask the death question, and 40 fist punch the air. Me! And O'Neill, matchstick crack child, watched his mother's body become a claw. And 9-year-old Tico Jefferson, barely big enough to lift the gun, fired a bullet into his own throat when Mama bended his back with a lead pipe. Tamika cried into a sofa pillow when Daddy blasted Mama into the north wall of their cluttered one-room apartment. Danya's cousin, gone in a drive-by, dark window, click, 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 gone, says Danya, her tiny finger a barrel, the thumb a hammer. I am astonished by their losses. And yet when I read a poem about my own hard-eyed teenager, Jeffrey asks, is he dead yet? Cannot be comprehended. My 18-year-old still pushing and pulling his own breath. And 40 faces pity me, knowing that I will soon be as they are, numb to our bloodied histories, favoring the reaper with a thumbs up and a wink, hearing the questioning shouting, me, Miss Smith, I know somebody dead. Can poetry hurt us, they ask me, before crawling into my words to sleep. I love you, Nicole says. Nicole wearing my face, pimples peppering her nose, and she is as black as angels are. Nicole's braids kissed with match flame to seal them. And can you teach me to write a poem about my mama, Miss Smith? I mean, you write about your daddy, and he's dead. Can you teach me to remember my mama? A teacher tells me this is the first time Nicole has admitted that her mother is gone. Murdered by slim silver needles and a stranger rifling through her blood, the virus pushing her skeleton through for Nicole to see. And now this child with rusty knees and mismatched shoes sees poetry as her scream and asks me for the words to build her mother again, replacing the voice, stitching on the lost flesh. So poets, as we take the stage, as we flirt and sin and rejoice behind microphones, remember Nicole. She knows that we are here now, and she is an empty vessel waiting to be filled. And she is waiting, and she is waiting, and she waits. Thank you. Thank you. So, I watch a lot of bad movies. And this poem was written after The Clash of the Titans. Not the new one, the old one. You know how you're like getting ready for work and you glance at the TV and the skeletons are fighting? And you're calling sick because you have to see the rest of the movies? That Clash of the Titans. So there was a part where Jason is hooked up with Medusa, right? And so I'm looking and I'm thinking, oh, well, he has to chop her head off. That's not hooking up really, but. So I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I used to read a lot of mythology. How did Medusa become Medusa? Well, she messed up the way a lot of us do. You hook up with the wrong guy, you know? And so she made love to Poseidon in Athena's temple. And Poseidon was Athena's man. And it was like, oh, no, you didn't, right? So then Athena said, okay, I'm going to do this stuff. Boom, snakes. Boom, stone, you know? So I thought I'm going to write a funny poem about something about Medusa going to the hairdresser or something. And nothing, if you're a poet, you know, you can be 3 steps away from your computer with a funny idea in your head, and you sit down and start typing, that shit gets dark. I don't know how, it's just like, this had to come out somehow, so. Anyway, so this is Medusa. Poseidon was easier than most. He calls himself a god, but he fell beneath my fingers with more shaking than any mortal. He wept when my robe fell from my shoulders. I made him bend his back for me, listen to his screams break like waves. We defile that temple the way it should be defiled, squirming and bucking our way from corner to corner. You know, the bitch goddess probably got a real kick out of that. I'm sure I'll be hearing from her. She'll give me nightmares for a week or so, that I can handle. Or she'll turn the water in my well into blood. I'll scream when I see it, and that'll be that. Maybe my first child will be born with the head of a fish. I'm not even sure it was worth it. Poseidon pounding away at me like a madman, losing his immortal mind because of the way my copper skin swells in moonlight. Now my arms smoke and itch. Hard scales are rising on my wrist like armor. Come on, Athena. He was just another lay, and not a particularly good one at that, even though he could spit steam from his fingers. I won't touch him again. Promise. And we didn't mean to drop to our knees in your temple, but our bodies were so hot and misaligned. It's not every day a gal gets to sample a god. You know that. Why are you being so rough on me? I feel my eyes twisting, the lids crusting over, the pupils glowing like red coals. Athena, woman to woman, could you have resisted him? Would you have been able to wait for the proper place, the right moment to jump those immortal bones? Now my feet are tangled with hair. My ears are gone. My back is curving and my lips have grown numb. My garden boy just shattered at my feet. Damn it, Athena, take away my father's gold. Send me away to live with lepers. Give me a pimple or two. But my face, to have men never again be able to gaze at my face, growing stupid in anticipation of that first touch, how can any woman live like that? How can I watch their warm bodies turn to rock when their only sin was desiring me? They just want to see me sweat. They just want to touch my face and run their fingers through my hair. Is it moving? Thank you. Thank you very much. I am going to, in honor of your class, I'm going to read a couple of pieces from Blood Dazzler. I am going to read, actually 3, but they're short. In the book Blood Dazzler, Katrina is personified. So Katrina is a woman. So as the storm is going on, you get her reaction to things. She's alternately remorseful, she's angry, she's sad, she's vengeful. So this first poem is when Katrina was still a tropical depression and had not yet fully formed. 5 p.m. Tuesday, August 23rd, 2005. Data from an Air Force Reserve Unit reconnaissance aircraft, along with observations from the Bahamas and nearby ships, indicate the broad low-pressure area over the southeastern Bahamas has become organized enough to be classified as Tropical Depression 12, National Hurricane Center. A muted thread of gray light, hovering ocean, becomes throat, pulls in wriggle, anemone, kelp, widens with the want of it all. I become a mouth, thrashing hair, an overdone eye. How dare the water belittle my thirst, treat me as just another small disturbance? Try to feed me from the bottom of its hand? I will require praise, unbridled winds to define my body, and a crime behind my teeth, because every woman begins as weather. Sips slow thunder and knows her hips. Every woman harbors a chaos and can wait for it, straddling a fever. For now, I console myself with small furies, those dips in my dawning system. I pull in a bored breath. The brine shivers. 8 a.m. Sunday, August 28th, 2005, Katrina becomes a Category 5 storm, the highest possible rating. For days, I've been offered blunt slivers of larger promises. Even flesh, my sweet recurring dream, has been tantalizingly dangled before me. I have crammed my mouth with buildings, brushed aside skimpy altars, snapped shut windows to bright shatter with my fingers, and I've warned them, soft, you must not know my name. Could there be other weather, other divas stalking the cringing country with insistent eye? Could there be other rain laced with the slick flick of electric in my own pissed boom? Or could this be it? My praise day, all my fist at once? Now officially a bitch, I'm confounded by words. All I've ever been is starving, fluid, and noise. So I huff a huge sulk, thrust out my chest, open wide my solo swallowing eye. You must not know. Scarlet glare fixed on the trembling crescent, I fly. That's okay, don't worry about it. One more. So I figured since Katrina was a human, she had a family, the place to go, the obvious place to go for the family were the other hurricanes of 2005. Um, and as you know, there's an A to Z list, and they work their way through the list unless a hurricane has been particularly destructive and they take that name out forever, so there'll never be another Katrina. This was a dance theater production in Harlem, and when we got to this point, because it had been so intense all the way through, we got to this point and all the lights went out and a mirror ball started, and we had the Hurricanes come out to disco music. They were like, hey. Um, I know, I'm a sick person. Okay. Arlene learned to dance backwards in heels that were too high. Brett prayed for a shaggy mustache made of mud and hair. Cindy just couldn't keep her windy legs together. Dennis never learned to swim. Emily whispered her gust into 1,000 skins. Franklin, farsighted and anxious, bumbled villages. Gert spat her matronly name against the city's flat face. Harvey hurled a wailing child high. Irene, the baby girl, threw wild tantrums. Jose liked the whip sound of slapping, and Lee just craved the whip. Maria's thunderskirts flew high when she danced. Nate was mannered and practical. He stormed precisely. Ophelia nibbled weirdly on the tips of depressions. Felipe slept too late, flailing on a wronged ocean, and Rita was a vicious flirt. She woke Felipe with rumors. Stan was born business, a gobbler of steel. Tammy crooned country, getting the words all wrong. Vince died before anyone could remember his name. Wilma opened her maw wide, flashing rot. None of them talked about Katrina. She was their odd sister, the blood dazzler. Fast. Am I okay still? Okay. There's something I wanted to read in particular. And for once, I'm going to have to go to the table of contents and do that thing that you hate when people do. Where in the world is that poem? Anybody read? Okay, it's in this book. Where is it? Where's the poem? Was it listening at the door? My name, I know that map for having which we pray toward you. Okay. Don't tell anybody I did this. Just doing it. Fighting back the ark. What? Is it in here? Oh, it's in here. Wait. Okay, forget it. I know it's in here, but I can't find it, and this is terrible to have been doing this. So I'm going to do something else, and then, okay. I am going to do something from back here. Yes. Okay. I think I mentioned, or somebody talked to me today about difficult poems. And I had a very difficult relationship with my mother. So this comes out of that. And it was one of the last things that I was able to write about. And we talked a lot about secrets today and how it was hard for me to come to this conclusion myself. Then it was hard for me to write it. Then it was hard for me to say it out loud. But then when I said it out loud, a lot of women came to me and said, me too. So the secrets, that's what keeps us quiet. The price of the end of it. But now it's her stooped body in the queue for the slab, her blessed temperature you're fiddling with, and God's holy directive shifts accordingly. Your mother holds the tasteful funeral home brochures an inch from her eyes until their horrible words unblur, shakes her head at the insane cost of the gilded pall-born tribute she truly craves, asks again for whatever's cheap. May her Lord forgive you as you just keep shuffling that cremation info to the top of the pile. You remember how stupidly she bobs her napped head to the wagging finger of God. God again, always God. How resolutely she clutches all the bluish notes in gospel. For her, the fire next time is not a frugal means of disposing of soulless shells. It is payback for a life clawed together outside of her Savior's cold little classroom. Oh, never you mind the lesson she drilled into you after a handgun blasted your father out of the world, what she said to end your bouts of snot and fever, your worrisome new habit of snatching tufts of hair from your own head and screaming the onsets of dawn. Your daddy's not in that old body anymore. And you unrolled your eyes just in time to look that pliant, just in time to make her think you believed her. Now that she has refused the neat conclusion of ash, you are thinking of all the damned reams of paperwork glorious ceremony requires, the feel of scrawling your name over and over to officially end her. There will be too many syrupy flowers draped over everywhere, the casket lid flipped open, your oblivious mother's vaguely whorish makeup job. You dread the hearse's eerie creep through annoyed Ubers, the depressing pit, mourners sneaking cell snaps, taking note of your absence of ache. While this strange woman comparison shops, zeroing in on the pauper special, girl, what is a cloth casket? You remember years of screaming her name into a dead phone after she scrubbed her whole history of your needy little face. Now that she is frail and beholding, you should demand that she answer for that kind of love. Or you can love that way too. Go on, throw a match into her hair. People are like, we don't like you no more. No. No, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean applaud or else. You guys. Yeah, that was a very hard poem to read, to write. I mean, all right. So the one that I was saying is in here, is actually in the book. So. I think I'll do this one and then I'll do two more. That should be about right, or I'm just gonna keep looking at you. So I'm reading for last time and this time. For John Coltrane. I always shudder when I pray. Mama say the Lord enters you in stages, first like a lit match under your skin, then like an animal biting through bone with soft teeth. Mama say lie still and wait for glory to consume you, wrap its way into your map like a lover, had his finger on paradise, knew the way with all his heart, then lost it. I always shudder when I pray, so your name must be a prayer. Saying your name colors my mouth, frees loose this river, changes my skin, turns my spine to string. I pray all the time now. Amen. Try not to touch me while I tell this. Try not to brush the thick tips of your fingers against my throat while my throat moves telling the story. Don't suddenly squeeze my bare shoulders or travel your mouth along the flat swell of my belly. Don't bite at the hollow in my back, whisper touch my ankles or match our skin like spoons. Don't punctuate this rambling sentence with your tongue or trace your name on the backs of my legs, please. Don't walk the question of your breath along my thighs or draw a map on my quivering breastbone guiding me to you, me to you, me to you, me to you. Do not play me that way. Don't play me that way. The way the sax man plays his woman, blowing into her mouth until she cries, allowing her no breath of her own. Don't play me that way, baby, the way the sax man plays his lady, that strangling, soft murder, notes like bullets, riffs like knives, and the downbeat slapping into her, and she sighs. Into her, and she cries. Into her, and she whines like the night turning. Just let me sit her on the bar stool who's sipping something bitter. Let me cross my legs, slow like the color girls do, and let me feel your eyes go there. Let me feed on glory and grow fat. Meanwhile, lover, let's fill this wicked church with music. Let me lean into the song for once without your mouth on me, the music a lit match under my skin, and I dance, all legs and thunderous and heels too high. I dance cheap perfume and black nail polish, sharkskin congregation, heads pressed, attitudes too tight, won't scream until it gets to be too much, won't beg for mercy until I wreck the landscape with my hips. Barstool's filling. Everybody's waiting for the glory to move through me. Fill me with hosannas, rock me with hallelujahs to shake these bored bones. They wait for you, supreme love, to pull me out onto the dance floor. Make me kick my heels above my head, high heels above my nappy head. While they wait, I will dance with the sax man. I will shimmer as he presses my keys. Him and me bopping, we are wicked church. So do not play, did you hear me tell you do not play me that way? The way I pray to be played. Mama say the Lord enters you in stages. Play me that way. First like a lit match under your skin, play me that way. Then like an animal biting through bone with soft teeth, play me. Mama say lie still and wait for glory that way. To consume me that way. Press my keys that way. Press my keys that way. Wait a minute, come around here and press that key twice. That felt kind of good, but don't pay me no mind, lover. I always shudder when I pray. Thank you, thank you. I have to. It's a sex poem audience. Before I go, and I have to, everyone's been nice enough to mention the National Book Awards and being a finalist and all that stuff. And you know, I got my dress, I got my shoes, I got my purse, got my, you know. But there is another luminary in the room who is also a finalist for a National Book Award in poetry. We're both in the same room. We like each other. We're not, you know. And it happens to teach here. Tiana Clark, right there, yay! Tiana is a finalist for her wonderful book, Scorched Earth. The finals, the ceremony and the reading before, it's the day before, there's a reading of all the National Book Award finalists, everybody in all the categories. Both of them are live streamed. So I think you should buy a couple of pizzas, call over some friends, pretend you care, and you know, and go, yay, have a little flag. Team Tiara, you know, Tiara. Team Tiara, Team Tiana, Team Patricia. Who the other people? We don't know. Okay. Anyway, have fun. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. You should see her dress. Just to tune in just to see her dress. Okay, I'm gonna do two more. I think I'll do this. I'm trying not to be sad. I'm so sad all the time. You know what? I went into a reading once and I was late, so I didn't have any time to think about what I was going to read. I got up there and I just started reading things real fast. And then after a while, I looked out in the audience and people were looping nooses around their necks and running out in traffic. You know, commonly known as my suicide reading, because I was not able to give it any thought as to what the hell I was doing. But this time, I am going to. Dun, 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 dun. The suicide. Okay, here it is. Poets don't write when they're happy. When we're happy, we go out and do happy stuff, right? It's like when when our hearts are shattered or Trump's reelected or something, we go, we write those kind of poems. Okay, yeah, what? That's what slam people, the best poem? Yeah, okay, all right, I see y'all. Okay, so I used to teach at the College of Staten Island. I had a hard time getting my students to write. So one day I come in, it's their day for their final, and I say, guess what? Good news, no final. Yay, yay. They carried me around on their shoulders for a while. And then I said, but I have something else I want you to do. So I asked them what their most difficult age was. Anybody, what was your most difficult age? 13, 17, 6 to 16. Somebody said 5 once, and I was like, 52 yesterday. Come on, faculty, up with it. Yeah, yesterday. Anyway, so my students, the consensus was 13. And if you think about 13, it's middle school. You know, if you have skin, something is wrong with it. You know, there's this whole nether region area, things are going on, you're not quite sure what that is. You know, your voice is cracking, it's awful. So I said, well, here's your new final. I want you to do a poem that's 13 stanzas, 13 lines each stanza, and 13 syllables each line. And I want it to be about being 13. Y'all know you're gonna go home and try it, right? Yeah, yeah. So you know, at one point, do this thing where it's because you don't know anything when you're a baby, so you can say, okay, I'm gonna write up to where I am now. My year 1 will be 1 line, 1 syllable. Year 2 will be 2 lines, right? And you just so if you're ever like, there's no such thing as writer's block, but if you think you have it, you can play a game with yourself. You know, I do things like a sonnet with no e's or something, you know, just to challenge myself and get out of my head. But anyway, so I'm going to read you, I'm not going to read all 13 of these, don't panic. I'm just going to read a couple, and then I'll do one more poem, and then we'll be done, okay? I am a guest here. I would like to be a guest again one day. It did take me, it was hard getting here, so I might stay. That's very nice of you, but I am under the control. You invited me. You're the head of the Poetry Center. Who else can I blame? Okay, 13 ways of looking at 13. 1, you touch your forefinger to the fat clots in the blood, then lift its iron stench to look close, searching the globs of scarlet for the dimming swirl of dead children. You thread one thick pad's cottony tail, then the other, through the little steel guides of the belt. You stand and lift the contraption. Yeah, I know, me too. You stand and lift the contraption, press your thighs close to adjust the bulk, then bend to pull up coarse white cotton panties bleached blue, and just to be safe, you pin the bottom of the pad to the shredding crotch of the Carters. Okay, how many women know what I'm talking about? Okay, good to see y'all, good to see y'all. Okay, all right. And then you spritz the guilty air with the cloying kiss of FDS. Uh-huh. It's time to begin the game of justifying ache. Time to name the mystery prickling right in your skin. You're convinced the boys can smell you, and they can. Let's see. Okay, we'll go to Miss Stein. Miss Stein scribbled a word on the blackboard, said, "Who can pronounce this?" And the word was anemone. And from that moment, you first felt the clutter of possible in your mouth. From the time you stumbled through the rhythm and she slow smiled, you suddenly knew you had the right to be explosive, to sling syllables through back doors, to make up your own damn words if you needed them. All that day, sweet anemone tangled in your teeth, spurted sugar tongue, led you to the dictionary where you were assured that it still existed, to the cave of the bathroom where you warbled it in bounce echo, and finally, convinced you owned that teeny gospel, you wrote it again and again and again and 4. Trying hard to turn hips to slivers, sway to stutter, you walk past the Sinclair station where lanky boys, dust in their hair, dressed in their uniforms of oil and thud, rename you pussy with their eyes. They bring sound, shudder, and blue from their throats just for you. Serve up ancient sonata of skin, drum, and conch shell. Sing suggesting woos of AM radio. Boom, boom. How you just gonna walk on by like that? And suddenly you know why you are stitched so tight, crammed like a flash bomb into pinafore, obeying your mama's instructions to be a baby as long as you can. Because it's a man's world, and James Brown is gasoline, the other side of slow zippers. He is all of it, the pump, pump, the growled, please, please, please. 8. In the bathroom of the whatnot joint on the way to school, you get rid of the starch and billowed lace, barrettes taming unraveling braids, white knee socks, and sensible hues. From a plastic bag, you take out electric blue eyeshadow, platforms with silver glitter heels, neon fishnets, and a blouse that doesn't so much button as suggest shut. The transformation takes 5 minutes, and you emerge feeling like a budding lady, but looking, in retrospect, like a blind streetwalker bursting from a cocoon. This is what television does. Turns your mother into clueless backdrop, fills your pressed head with the probabilities of thrum. Your body becomes just not yours anymore. It's a dumb little marquee. 9. Okay, did anybody else, ladies or guys, put your father's or your brother's shirt on top of your head and let the sleeves hang down this side and walk around the house like this? No, just me? Yeah? Yeah, okay, that was prime kid life. Boom, boom, you turn around. Boom. And then you put a rubber band on them. Boom, you know. Anyway. But okay. With your bedroom door closed, you are skyscraper bouffant, peach foundation, eyelashes like upturned claws. You are exuding ice. You are pinched all over by earrings. You are way too much woman for this room. The audience has one chest, a single shared chance to gasp. They shudder, heave, waiting for you to open your mouth and break their hearts. Taking the stage, you become an S, pour ache into hip swings. Tisk, tisk as the front row collapses. Damn, they want you. You lift the microphone. Something illegal comes out of you, a sound like titties and oil. I wrote that. I actually wrote a sound like titties and oil. So somehow I think I knew what titties and oil sounded like. But I went over the book again. And every time I looked at it, it seemed to make sense, so I let it stay in there. So there it is. A sound like titties and oil. Mama flings the door open with a church version of your name. Then you are pimpled, sexless, ashed, and double Dutch knees. You are spindles. You are singing into a hairbrush. Yeah, y'all remember that pain, right? Right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's it for that, 13. And one more. Oh, thank you. Ooh. I got one more poem, and they're both sad. That's okay. Life is sad nowadays, right? Okay. Yeah, this one. Everybody good? Still okay? Good. Oh, I will tell you guys about Blood Dazzler. When I wrote the book, I didn't have any dogs. And there's a segment in there where, in the South, a lot, people tie their dogs out, and they come out and feed them. They come get them later or whatever. So my husband had brought home a picture. He was bringing home pictures that he couldn't run in the paper. So there was a dead dog draped over a power line. And that made me remember all the people who wouldn't leave their homes because they couldn't take their dogs with them. So I wrote about a dog, and there's touch points in the book where you visit in with this dog who is left and is thinking someone's going to come, and they don't come, and So in this book about Katrina, I had people in the audience come up to me and say, "I will stay for this reading if you don't read the poem about the dogs." And that let me know how like tied into dog world. Most people were. And now, of course, I would run in front of an 18-wheeler for my dog. So now I understand. Okay, but this will be the last one. Okay. In February 2010, 21-year-old student Shamsiddin Abdur Rahim abducted his 3-month-old daughter, Zara. He placed her in a knapsack, drove to a bridge on the Garden State Parkway in New Jersey, and threw her out of the passenger side window of his car. She drowned in the Raritan River more than 100 feet below. In November 2011, also in New Jersey, Arthur Morgan III picked up his 2-year-old daughter, Tiara, for a trip to the movies. Later, Tiara was found face down in a frigid stream beneath a park overpass, strapped into a car seat that had been weighed down with a car jack. It was unclear whether she was thrown from the overpass or carried into the park and placed in the water. The 5 stages of drowning. Surprise. There is no drunk like the drunk of milk sleep. A drizzled white floods the body and weighs down everywhere we think we know about awake. Zara's new clockwork staggers with it, while Daddy, grizzle and wild-eye, lobs her like trash over the rusting rail. Inside the sack, the wriggling child cannot translate fly, plummet, descend. She doesn't realize the hard questions she poses for pigeons, or how, so dull and stupid with dairy, she is all the fall the sky can language. Babies accept what they are given. They never question the morning's flood of sun, a kitchen's blaring stink, or the wide hovering faces of fathers. After a swollen breeze pries her eyes open in the few seconds it takes for the fevered discarding of a daughter, baby doesn't ask the sun, needling light into the sack, to offer rule or direction. Zara Malani Lynn Abdur Rahim, little not bird, has been jettisoned, ditched, unloaded. Her snared arms can find no rhyme for wing. The river's glittering trash smacks her blunt, but not before her tiny O fails its role as mouth, not before language breaks its promise to wait for her. If Zara can conjure no word for word, can find no way to bellow, "Up, Daddy, up," as she tumbles, stuffed inside a down, 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 reeking so oddly of him, how would she voice panic born of the day's quick fist? Slapped awake, she breathes in the close cloth and feels the little ruckus of a new heart. The startled river opens, then closes over her the way a new mother would. Involuntary breath holding. Imagine filling your whole body with everything you are and then holding it there. Imagine the smallness of that body. You are nothing but the easy of blue, red, and green, food you have smashed with your fingers, and the stumbling possibilities of walk. Imagine not knowing that the ability to contain all of you in tiny ballooned cheeks decides whether you continue. Imagine not knowing the word continue. Quick wisp of fish nip warily at those fat cheeks, fall into irreparable love, and decide to make a new religion of you. Hallelujah, you are now a religion, a church of slither and slide, while Daddy roars his glee into noontime traffic, not thinking about you, but thinking about your mother and screeching, oh, she got another man now, huh? Well, fuck that hoe. I got something for her ass. I bet this gonna fix her bitch ass now. And you, Tiara, are the fix for her ass now. You are the fix for mama's ass now. You are the pawn in a payback that cannot be unplayed. And your daddy, now miles away from your slow plunging, does a lousy parking job and stumbles into a smoky red-walled gin mill populated by other men without daughters. Hoisting a fat gold shot, he toasts his one accomplishment, the uncomplicated removal of a complication, while your cheeks deflate and the door to your next minute closes. You were alive when the stream first lapped its way round you. and the t sound comes so sweet to the mouth of a baby who wants it. You laughed, Daddy, until the giddy fish re examined their worship of you. You coughed, Daddy, until Daddy was nothing but sound. Then you spat into the mud until you couldn't. The fickle fish, back in love, kissed the place where your breath had been. Hypoxic convulsions. Daddy is the architect of a baby girl's roll and rock. He teaches her to manage slink, schools her in a woman's wet engine. If Zara lives, which she most definitely will not, somebody else's daddy will teach her all the one way there is not to get lured into a sack, how to lay quietly in the wrong skirt while muscles argue, how one well-timed convulsion usually clears the dance floor. Like good drowning, good dancing hits the backside like an annoyance that must be watusit loose. But how to respond to a sudden wet that's out to rearrange? Of course, drums are injected, and Tierra, all thrash and snapdragon, shimmies for her giggle back. Baby is the battery black women build their bodies around until they're old enough to be officially romanced by yet another revision of Jesus. But right now, they're too little to feel the full hand of the Jesus voice, the caress of proverb and psalm. They're flirting with that big daddy for all their little worth. Look at that itty-bitty jerk and boogaloo, that pop swirling of hips they can't find, that runaway rim shot in unfinished chest. They're rearing back, opening wide, rearing back, opening wide, rearing back, both throats opening and slamming shut with river. Cue the skanky music. Brackish water snags the rhythm, controls their arms and ankles, gleefully involves their necks. It says, baby, save the last dance for me. Unconsciousness. The river, though. Sluggish and cagey and habitually a bitch, the river has not yet decided to accept Zara, this vexation in her mouth. She is dazzled by choke, flopped blossoms, and the occasional seduced diver, but repulsed by all frailties of skin. The river is seldom in a mood to have her swerve scrutinized or interrupted. Now, what is this damn hindrance keeling over in my current? Prying the sack wide with gush, she prods the puckered contents, is not entertained. Intending to add the ugly pudge to her baubles, she finds that she cannot rouse it, is so not entertained. The little blue knot fish thing is flaccid, so unfun, snatched up in its sopping petal pink, the eyes slit and rolling, nappy crown trapping living things that desperately need to breathe. The hide skids and burps. The river's most devoted feeders, so jazzed at first, have already had a go at it. And the thing won't give the river its props, won't beg for refuge in the water's arms. It won't say anything. The river flicks a bored blue finger at it, then flicks it away. She is so over this drama. Hell, the end of anything is only a kick to watch once. Clinical death. The final stage in the drowning process is death. Clinical death occurs when both breathing and circulation stop. The victim is in cardiac arrest. The heart stops pumping blood. The vital organs are no longer receiving oxygen-rich blood. The lack of oxygen causes the skin to turn blue. There are 52 shades of blue, or 1,000,052, depending upon which river you ask. 3, cornflower. 17, cerulean. 21, blunt force. 28, turquoise. 34, navy. 37, fix for her bitch ass now. 41, sky. 47, goodbye. But the way the river says it, bye, all dismissal and shade. 52, goodbye. But the way a daddy says it, over his shoulder, thrilling the done of the deed, already mad at the traffic. Thank you very much. Thank you. So are people coming up here?
Oh, I just put it there.
Any time left when we've done this, I will do a funny poem. I'm just like, I can't leave them like that. This is scary. It's like 60 minutes or something.
Maybe we just leave it at two other mics. I think we're okay. Yeah, thank you. Let's do like, should we do 15 minutes? Does that sound good? Yeah, somewhere in there? Okay, let's do
I actually think I am going to drink all this. Okay, thank you.
Who wants a special glass? I feel like I will spill it.
These are babies.
Hey everyone. Alrighty, so we're gonna get these questions started. Sorry. So can I? Okay. There we go. All right. So for our first question, so the Intentions of Thunder includes a variety of poems from your career. They tell multiple stories, themes, and settings from Chicago to grief to murder. In terms of Intentions of Thunder, how did you go about selecting certain poems from your previous collections and finding ways to put them in conversation with each other?
I don't think I needed to find ways to put them in conversation with each other simply because when I looked over them, I realized that the well they were all coming from was me. I had my concerns might have changed from time to time, but there were some basic things I was always concerned with: the audiences that I was reaching, the inclusion of voices that I didn't normally hear. Um, so I, in choosing the poems, I went to each book, and the tendency would be I'm just going to choose the ones that I used to read over and over. But there were a lot of poems that I used to overlook. Not sure why, and because my first book, I was still kind of on stage and doing slamming. I think that there were poems I didn't overlook because they didn't that I overlooked because they didn't perform as well. But now I went back to them. I was looking at them as as written work, and seeing that there were things in there that I really liked. So I wanted to get the essence of each book. The Life According to Motown was kind of it was a book about growing up on the west side of Chicago, growing up kind of figuring out that the place that you've always wanted to get away from was the place that you actually needed to pay more attention to. Uh, Big Town's Big Talk was more of a musical book, so there were poems in there about Little Richard, things like that. So each one of the books had a theme. Although now, when you tell people, "Oh, I've got 40 poems," it's time for me to have a book, and they say, "What's it about?" And that didn't used to happen. It used to be that you'd have a variety of poems, and then you'd look for a narrative line or something. But nowadays, it's like, okay, what huge thing do I want to write about? And it was difficult. It was difficult because as I went back into the book, I had to relive a lot of things. My purpose in writing some of those poems was to get on the other side of some difficulties. And in going back in, I really had to kind of relive those difficulties over again.
First of all, wow, like, can we take a little pause and sort of figure out, like, it's so amazing hearing you perform your work. And I know I was reading
your poetry on paper, but hearing it live is just, it's so stunning. And throughout the entire performance, I'm just like, have another like, round of applause all the work that you do.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And once again, thank you for answering our question. Another question that we had was, I know throughout most of your work, you sort of have this persona style. We see this in, for example, Unshuttered, where you have photography of, or you transform photography of 18th century Black figures into sort of semi-historical stories, but also with your own sort of fictionalized narrative to it. And also with Blood Dazzler, for example, where you have the voices of the victims. And throughout these personas and of these works, you're very respectful of these stories and bring sort of a history to light that hasn't been told. One question that we had was sort of how do you sort of go about navigating making these personas while also sort of thinking about careful narratives and distinguishing your voice, for example, from the voices of others?
Persona was something that I discovered when, back in my slam days, there was a poet who uh, was a slam champion in the place that I frequented. And she did and I just told this story a little while ago, but I repeat it again. She did a poem about the barber who cut the hair of people who were about to go into the gas chamber. And she finished the poem, and there was this, I've never seen anyone control a room like that. It was this white heat moment of silence. No one knew what to do. She had gotten herself out of the way and had us listening directly to the barber. The barber knew where the people were going; they didn't. And every day there was just a pile of hair that would just grow and grow and grow. And it taught me two things. It was one, that sometimes persona is exactly the right choice to tell a story. And the other thing is, sometimes the best way to tell a story is not right on. You have to look at the periphery of a story and look at other people who are part of that story who may have been looked over, and that might be the strongest voice, the most impactful voice. And I used to do persona all the time when I first discovered it. It's like, oh, what's it like to be a gym shoe? Oh, here comes a stinky foot, you know. Uh, you learn something and you do it over and over and over and over and over again. And then finally I realized it's a really powerful device, and I have to learn when to use it and when not to use it. There is also a question that comes forth about whether or not, once you inhabit someone else's body, does it cease to be your story? Are you then taking someone else's story? And there is so much territory to explore with that question. And I think each individual case has to be considered kind of separately. For me, and I think the word you used was respectful. I don't go farther into I let the persona kind of tell me how it wants to sound, which sounds kind of mystical, but I honestly believe that. Uh, and now with Katrina, for instance, uh, going into the lives of some of the people involved, I was very aware of the fact that people can be combative about that, and so, and very shortly, because this will go on forever and ever, because it's a topic I talk about a lot. But I do believe that being a poet means being a witness, and that it's hard to witness just what has personally happened to you, but also that the main thing is to be willing to, for instance, people could say, I'm going to write about Katrina because everybody's writing about Katrina. And that's not a real reason to invest in a poem like that. So if you're invested in it for a reason, like I had to write them because I thought it's not a regional tragedy, it's a human tragedy, right? And I by no means was writing Katrina's whole story, but you have to be willing to be confronted about it, and you have to know why you're doing it. Otherwise you shouldn't do it.
After hearing you read, I was really struck by the sonic quality of your poetry, and I'm very interested in your use of meter and rhythm, particularly when I was reading Blood Dazzler and poems like Up on the Roof and What to Tweak. Your experience with slam poetry definitely comes through in these poems. And I was wondering, how do you mediate the music of poetry and the urgency of social justice? And how has your background in slam poetry influenced the musicality of your written work?
Okay. So if we talk about music, um, I I'm a Motown baby. Okay, I live and breathe Motown. I love the fact that if you listen to a lot of those songs, there's a rhyme scheme, there's internal rhyme, there's a whole story, there's an arc. Everything's beautiful, and I grew up listening to that. So for me, that's what a story had to be. And poetry is a huge unwieldy story. Just right now, it's in a tight control space, right? I was told early on, because I was a black poet and I started out in performance, that the traditional forms of poetry were not for me, that I was to not dabble. That was not my territory. It'll be too hard for you. It's structure, and you people don't like structure. You know, you're out there doing free verse. So just leave this to us, because there was a lot of tension between performers and so-called academic poets. You know, and so I just said, well, nobody stamped any part of the canon that belongs to anybody. So I said, I wonder what they're hiding back here. So I decided I was gonna that I was gonna learn meter. I studied with a woman named Annie Finch, who is crazed, a meter goddess. Studied with her for 2 years, so I wanted to learn it, speak it, know the language of it, and then put it in my toolbox, so that if I had a poem that required repetition, I'd say, oh, how much repetition is that? Look at a repeating form and pull it out. For instance, in Blood Dazzler, there's a poem called Ethel Sestina, and it's a sestina because elderly people have comfort spots in their language that they return to again and again. So I said, what's a poem where I'm going to come back to the same words again and again? And it was a sestina. So it allows me to work in service of the poem. The more things I have in my toolbox, in terms of, um, and what I love the most is putting massive contemporary concerns in traditional forms. It's just not expected, and it's so tense and beautiful. But it belongs to me now. It belongs to me now. So there is no aspect of the canon that I think is off limits to anyone or should be. And the fact that I was just supposed to be out, that was the thing about the prejudice people had against the performers. You're just out there screaming into the mic. So don't let us real poets do the real thing. And when you talk about the connection to social justice, it comes back to really the beginnings, being on stage and looking out at the audience and having someone there who's bagging groceries, having someone who's brought their children with them because they have no one to keep the children, having someone just got out of jail for murder. It was acquitted of murder. There he is in Slam already, to have this cross section of America every Sunday night get up. Each one of them had their same 5 minutes behind the mic to say whatever they wanted. And for me, that's what poetry comes down to. It can have all this stuff built on top of it, accolades and academy and all this stuff, but it comes down to someone who has never stood in front of a room with something urgent that they have to say. And that never. Thanks.
All right, so building off of that question, a big theme in your poetry is violence, whether it be natural violence or social violence. And in this very chaotic and violent time, what do you think the role of poetry is in contrast to violent settings, and how is it that you can transform these occurrences into art?
Okay, so I was. This is going to lead to your question. Don't worry, because I can go wee. I was in Germany once, and they had put a bunch of poets on a train to travel through the German countryside. And every time they stopped, there would be a little town, would have their music would be playing and food sold, and they'd have a little canopy, and the poets would read, and everyone would cheer, and they'd get back on the train, they go to the next town. It was all excitement. So I was in Berlin when the train came back for everybody came home. There were so many people in the train station that they had to close it down to ordinary travelers. And the right where the train stopped, it was packed. So the door would open and they would pass the poets out over their show. And people had placards with the poets' names and pictures on them and phrases from their poetry. And I'm like, where the hell am I? Right? Right? And it's the difference between a young country and an old country, right? It's like for them, you go to the news people for the news and you go to the poets for the truth. It wasn't until there was such a dearth of truth here that people looked and said, let's go, let's see what the poets let's see what the poets are doing. So and we're doing what we have always, been doing. But all of a sudden, there's not all of a sudden, there's always a responsibility. You could do poetry as a recreational exercise, you could do it in your spare time. But then you also have to realize that real people are listening. And they are now real people who are hungry for something. They're hungry to hear their own stories replicated. They're hungry to know that they still have power in some aspect. They're hungry to know that hopefully there have been times like this that have been almost darker and we have come up from them. And so people are looking to poetry to kind of see that. And when you asked the question, I thought of a particular, okay, and in terms of the violence, and we're tired. We're tired of being pummeled with violence, violence, violence. So it is the poet's responsibility to tell those stories again, but to shine a different light on them somehow. So I'm gonna give you one example. In Minneapolis, Philando Castile was killed. And a lot of people know about this because his partner was on Facebook Live while it was happening. He was asked if he had a weapon. He said, yes, I have permits. He's going in for the permits, and he got shot in the chest. So you can hear like the panic of his partner. And so you ask yourself, nobody's going to want to hear this story again, right? So how do I make it so somebody wants to hear it? Same thing that I told you guys about the barber. You look at the story. Who's there? You've got Philando, you've got the policeman, you've got his partner, you've got people watching on the street. You might have somebody waiting and remember that a poem comes from somewhere and goes somewhere. So you can always think you have someone waiting at home, somebody waiting at home. You could have them at home getting dressed that day, not knowing that was to be his last day. But you know who else was there? A 4-year-old strapped in the back seat. Okay? A 4-year-old strapped in the back seat. You try on all the shoes in a story, and when the shoes get really uncomfortable, you start writing. And that was the most uncomfortable aspect in that whole story was that 4-year-old. So you go a little bit farther. You don't want to just say, oh, there was a 4-year-old in the car. You want to go deeper than that. You go, what do 4-year-olds like? They like watching cartoons. What kind of cartoons? Well, I don't know if they still like the same cartoons, but I loved Looney Tunes. What were Looney Tunes cartoons like? Elmer Fudd would shoot Daffy Duck directly in his head, and the beak would go around 5 times and stop in the front. Ha, ha, ha. And he was fine, right? Roadrunner would kick Coyote's butt off the top of a mountain. He'd fall all the way down the mountain. Look, remember the little poof at the end? So you see him hitting the dirt. Next scene, he's back. So for a 4-year-old, death. I've seen death. And then, so you've got Deanna, her name was Deanna, and she's trying to convince her mother everything's gonna be okay while her mother's screaming. Screaming. Said, Mom, all you need to do, you get him some peanut butter and some aspirin, he'd be all right. Mama, stop screaming. Stop screaming, And then you see her transformation. She gets into the car as a young girl. She leaves the car as a grown woman. She realizes death is final. She's there in that car with that heat and that hot iron smell of that blood, which she will never forget. So it's her poem, and most of the part of the poem is talking about Looney Tunes, and that's the bait and switch, where you get your audience listening. Oh, Looney Tunes, and you start connecting to it. It's I used to watch Looney Tunes, and then it just switches to Deanna and her view of death. You know, so the thing about violence, it won't stop. We're gonna get tired of it. We want to care, but the stories pummel us all the time. So the poet's job is to make that story different enough that it pulls you in and you read it again. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking about that. I love how you kind of mentioned that the poet's job is to shed like a different light on these stories, especially when there's so much violence. You kind of need to do it in a way that's poignant and also meaningful to an audience. One question that we had that's sort of a little bit fun is at the beginning of The Intentions of Thunder, you dedicate the collection to a list of phenomenal poets whom you dub sort of your teachers. And one of these, among these lists, is the prolific poet Gwendolyn Brooks, whose portrait we have in the Poetry Center hanging up. And I know you talked a little bit about this during dinner, but what kind of has Brooks taught you about poetry and about life in general, and sort of in what ways do you pay homage to her works?
What kind of books taught me?
What has Brooks taught you about
What have books?
poetry?
Oh, um, I thought you were going to ask me about the weird people on my list. I had Smokey Robinson on my list, but then he was accused of sexual assault, and I had to take him off. I love Smokey Robinson. I mean, Smokey Robinson taught me a lot about rhythm and rhyme and all that. And he was right up there, and they went, "Ooh, Smokey, I don't know." I mean, nothing's happened so far, but I didn't want to have his name in there and then have him have to do the walk of shame. Um, so when I didn't know anything about poetry when I started, and I was just like, "This is fun. Let's get up on stage and we'll talk to each other and all that." So I volunteered at a bookstore, Guild Books, and then there was a used bookstore across the street from it, and I would go in every day, the poetry section, and I would take a book down from the shelf, read the first three poems, go, "This is good" or "This is bad." I didn't know anything about who I was doing. And when I tell this, people go, I think they're expecting me to say one thing and I say something else. But the first book that I encountered that made me just stop and say, I can't believe this, was a book by a poet named Stephen Dobbins. Yeah. And the book was Cemetery Nights. And I took that book down. And actually, one of my favorite Stephen Dobbins poems is a poem called The Gun. And it's about a kid who's trapped above a garage with another kid who's trapped him there and is threatening him and stuff. And the kid takes a gun out and just plays with him with the gun, and the other kid is horrified. And then finally the kid gets so scared he pees on himself, and the guy says, "You baby, you're disgusting, get out of here." So the kid goes back down and goes outside, and the end of the poem is where oh, he says he walks out to the orderly occupations of a summer afternoon, trimming a hedge, mowing a lawn. Then it says, "Where is the sense of the world you woke with this morning? Now it is smaller. Now it has gone away." And that stuck with me, how the things we think we've paved over have such a profound impact on our lives. But Stephen writes about these tiny horrors, and you think you've paved them over, and you turn around and look at them, and the pavement's going like this, and you have to go back in. And that was one of the first books I discovered, and I said, if I can do this, everything's going to be all right. And he wound up being a good friend of mine later, and I was be very very conscious of him being in an audience. And finally, he asked me a question, a specific question about a poem, and I said, I have totally made it now. But I think when people ask me, they ask me about my favorite poets, I connect a lot to Gwendolyn Brooks because of where she's from and her impact in Chicago. And she writes the soundtrack of A Chicago Colored Girl. That's just it. And then there's Stephen Dobbins, big hulking white man, you know. And when I say that, some people are surprised unless they've read his poetry. So yeah, those books. And then when I decided to to learn form, don't ever try to learn form from a book or prosody. I got Patterns of Poetry by Miller Williams, something else. I don't know. And I was trying to replicate the stuff. You can't do it unless you can hear it out loud. So I couldn't teach myself anything. But I will say, if I had to choose two books that brought me a long way, it would be Stephen Dobbins' Cemetery Nights, and I'm going to say Gwendolyn Brooks' Maud Martha, because I think her longer work is as poetic, if not more, than her poetry.
Do we have time for one more question? Okay, I'll try to bring it home. Um,
Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
yeah. So, with your commentary on disaster, social issues like Katrina, I'm wondering if, as you write in Scars Poetica, poetry can change your life but changes nothing else. What is the utility you see in writing it? Can changing someone's life translate to systemic change? How can poetry be coupled with action? No pressure.
Yeah, I do believe that, and people get down on me for this all the time. I do believe poetry can change your life. Um, I think that we have this little cocoon where we have a huge poetry community and we read to each other, and I keep telling people the community includes everybody. It includes the academics, it includes the slammers, it includes we need to keep that community as it is. But if there is someone in an audience, sometimes it's a line that's inconsequential in your poem that might make them feel recognized, make them feel less alone, or the best thing is make them go home and pick up a pen. They don't have to think, oh, I'm going to be published, or just I can tell it's my life story. I'm in charge of telling my life story. If I do not tell it in some way, I give permission for someone else to tell it. And anything that we can do that gives as much power back to those people as we can. Workshops in places where there are not usually workshops. We tend to think teaching poetry to poets, it's fun, it's good, but teaching poetry to people who feel like they can't access anything poetic is really, really a much more rewarding experience. So I do. Oh, I have a poem. I'm not even sure that's in the book, but it was a found poem. It was a letter that was written to me, and it was written from a prison, and it was to get your poetry, and it was this long, intricate thing with strings under the doors and pulling, and they were trading poems back and forth and all that, and it was hard. It was hard for them to do that, and it said, please, send me more poetry, and my this is the first time that I felt like I might have a future outside of, out in the open air, you know. So how is that not a life change, so I think we need to get out of the box, not talk to ourselves so much. It's like preaching to the choir, but find people, especially now, who are looking for ways to tell their own stories, to make themselves feel visible and important again in a world, a country which is
dedicated now, it seems, to making them less and less and less until they're not here at all. And so in order to, it's like use that voice. I said second throat earlier. We all talk, but the second throat is you realize outside of the life I'm living is the story I'm telling of that life. And without that story, there's no muscle to this, and say it doesn't have to be spelled right. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. I say we're going to write poems. I can't write a poem because I can't spell. That's ridiculous. Okay, so take all those barriers that people feel coming across outside into an academic place. Like, I teach at Princeton, and we're close to Trenton, which is a really, it's not downtrodden anymore, but people are afraid to come across that threshold. So ask yourself in academia, what can you do to make this space, be a place where people feel comfortable coming in, asking questions, working on their own work, things like that, even though they're not enrolled or something. We just have to realize that the space that we're in is sometimes the only space there is, and everybody belongs there.
Thank you.
For coming. Let's get one more round of applause.